Okay, I am here with...
My name is Nik Dobrinsky. I'm a Vancouver-based artist and writer.
Yes. So today we're going to be talking about Nik Dobrinsky and his entire personal brand, what his views are on pop culture, and everything about that. So let's start. What is the backstory behind creating Boy Drinks Inc., and why did you choose that name for your comic character and your personal brand?
Yeah, thanks, Lachlan. Well, Boy Drinks Inc. came out of a few things. It's actually an anagram of my name, Nik Dobrinsky. So I spell my name N-I-K, short for Nikolai. So there's no C there. So N-I-K, and then my last name is Dobrinsky, D-O-B-R-I-N-S-K-Y. And I've always just been into wordplay and stuff. And I don't know, several years back, somehow, I don't know, I was messing around with the anagrams of my name, and I came up that if you rearrange the letters, it spells Boy Drinks Inc.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of a cool thing, like it reminded me of children's reading books, See Spot Run, or
Yeah.
Boy Meets Girl, that kind of thing. And then I just thought it was fitting, being an artist and a writer. And I'm also kind of not, I'm sure as we'll get into, but I'm not strictly one medium. I don't strictly work with one medium or one form. So I just thought the ink, relates to writing, but it also relates to pretty much everything I do. We'll get into that, but if you want. But yeah, I've done a variety of art forms, and it always comes back to words in my case. So I thought Boy Drinks Inc. is maybe kind of a cool brand. And then, so I had that idea years ago, didn't really do anything with it. And then when it came time I wanted to build a website, but I didn't just want to call it my name. I was looking at, I graduated from UBC creative writing program, and okay, what do I want to do now, or how do I want to put myself out there as a writer?
Yeah.
And so I thought, I'll start with a website. So I looked out at some other emerging writers' websites, and they were always just kind of bland to me, like just their name and basically almost like a resume, like a list of their publications or a few things they've done, but not even really any of their work or no style to it. It was just like whatever, their name, writer, and then here's what I've done. So I was like, that's fine, not to diss that, but I was like, for me, I want something a little bit artsier, maybe you might say.
To stand out more. Yeah,
so as you've checked out the website, right? So you saw there's a little animation. Did you view it on a laptop, by the way? So you saw, because the animation doesn't show up on the cell phone.
And there is a boy who drinks it.
Yeah, so I'll briefly explain. This is audio only. I put a little, if you go to my website on a computer, it's a different format on the phone, but on a computer it comes up with a little animated figure of kind of a cartoon boy, and he's holding a inkwell, an old style inkwell with a feather quill out sticking out of it, and he drinks from the inkwell, and then he turns to the side and kind of sprays out of his mouth this black ink, which then forms the letters Boy Drinks Inc. on the top of my website. And so that was kind of the framing of it. And then, there's different sections, videos. I did some kind of slam style poetry performance for a while, and kind of rap songs and stuff. So there's some videos of me doing that. There's some audio tracks, and then lots of reviews of music, of movies, TV, and some essays too, just about general things. So it's kind of multimedia, right? And some comic strips too, again, as well. So all kinds of stuff.
In those comic strips, Boy Drinks Inc., is he a big part in it? Is he like the main character?
So one of them, I actually only have 2 comics up on there right now. One of them is the main character does resemble the boy in the corner of my website, as I described in the comic that I call High Art. He's a little bald-headed guy, The other one doesn't resemble, also has a cartoon character, but he doesn't resemble that same boy, but it is a thematically, however loosely linked thing, thing that occurs throughout the website. I'll just say too, since you asked about that, it's still a work in progress, and my ideal goal is I also have a short fiction story that I'm working on, also called Boy Drinks Inc., and a rap song that I've been writing, also called Boy Drinks Inc., which all tell this fictional story of this urban character who He's kind of a struggling artist. He is down on his luck, and it's in this weird kind of dark science fiction-y world as well. And he wants to commit suicide one day, so he acquires a bottle of poison. And in his depression and in the darkness at night, in the story, he grabs the bottle of ink instead of the poison, or knocks it over on the desk. They kind of mix together, and he drinks it and grabs his gun and wretch falls to the ground, kind of like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, mad scientist kind of thing, and thinks he's dying, and then he kind of passes out. He wakes up and he's like, oh, what happened? And I'm still alive. And he goes to yell in frustration, and ink spews out of his mouth that forms words on the ground. And so he kind of becomes this superhero kind of folk hero character, and then he becomes like this nighttime graffiti artist spraying mess. He can't speak with his voice, he can only spray these words, and he leaves these like political and poetic phrases all over the city and becomes this folk hero character. So that's the fiction story that I'm yet to finish. And then I also wrote a hip-hop song, or am writing one, that kind of describes that story in rhyme. Mm-hmm. So it's this holistic, multimedia, kind of multifaceted vision. Yeah. Do
you think that Boy Drinks Ink is like an alternate version of you for like personality-wise in these stories?
Yeah, definitely somewhat. Yeah, I mean, I think I even say that in the artist bio or, mission statement or something on the website that, kind of project the whole website I look at as kind of projecting an alternate universe version of me, And the title, the brand name, Boy Drinks Inc., very much says that, as it's literally the letters of my real name rearranged into this cartoon fantasy kind of world, right? So I thought it was kind of cool, and people responded pretty well to that whole concept, because I think it is unique, like I said, a lot of websites are just plain and give you basic information. It may look nice design-wise, but and that's all great, but for me, I wanted to do something kind of with this other layer to it, And like I say, it's a work in progress. I haven't finished the fiction story yet. I haven't finished the song yet, but it'll keep getting more and more fleshed out with these other dimensions, right? That's the goal, at least, right?
Yeah. Now, with pop culture, do you think that it plays like a big role in your career, like inspiration-wise?
It does. I mean, I don't consider myself like a huge pop culture follower per se.
Yeah.
I think of myself more as interested in arts and entertainment in general.
Yeah.
And so some of my interests certainly fall very much within popular culture trends or popular interests, but others are more fringe, a little more alternative. And I think I also describe that in my website About Me page, where I say, that I'm kind of interested in exploring those connections between pop culture and counterculture, let's say, or alternative or more fringe or underground culture, So many of the reviews that I do, like film reviews, for example, are huge popular things in pop culture, like Star Wars, for example. I review the newest Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, I saw that. Rogue One.
Yeah, I didn't. Exactly. I did the two. What do they call them? Anthology solo films, and then I also did the 3 sequel trilogies, and that's a huge, obviously one of the biggest things in pop culture. But something that occurred to me was like something that a friend told me who checked out my website, and he was like, yeah, you do all these big pop culture things, but things that tend to have a cult following.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know that word, like or they call cult films, or
group.
A passionate. Well, it's actually a term that's in constant debate of what does that actually mean. A cult film. What qualifies as a cult film?
A film with a big fan base.
Kind of, yeah. It's hard to define, but I mean, when I was a kid, it used to be something that is maybe not widespread, popular in the mainstream, but has a super dedicated, passionate, smaller fan base. Maybe lower budget movies or things like that. So, but it has become to be used for kind of anything that has kind of a passionate fan base, regardless of its level of popularity in pop culture, right? So so it's kind of true. And my friend said, I'm like, oh yeah, I do some obscure film reviews, like Polish foreign films and stuff that most people don't know about, just because it's something I watched and was interested in and felt I had something to say about it.
Yeah.
Is my mic over there? And but I also, for the more mainstream kind of popular culture things, I tend to do something that has some kind of passionate followings, like Star Wars, Twin Peaks. I don't know if you're familiar with that show.
Yeah.
But it's an old show. It started in the early '90s. I watched when I was a kid, and then 25 years later, they did another season of it, and it was hugely popular back in the day in the '90s. And then when they tried to do this relaunch or this second season, third season, I guess it was, 25 years later, it didn't have as much of a buzz in the mainstream, but that passionate fan base loved it still, right? So some things that after decades, years, have these like passionate fan bases, I guess somehow that appeals to me.
Yeah. And so you think that maybe pop culture has like helped you connect with a wider audience, and well, in your reviews, in your comics, and almost everything, do you think that like helps?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's hard to say unless I did something different that didn't follow some pop culture things and compare them, you know what I mean? But I would say the short answer is yes, that, certainly my website would be even more niche than it already is, because it's fairly niche. I'm an independent artist and so forth, right? I don't have any big sponsors. There's no ads on there or anything. I do it all myself. Yeah. But yes, it would probably have less views and be even more niche if I didn't have some of that popular culture content on there, for sure. Which I want to add too is like, I think it actually speaks to the appeal of my site for those whatever few fans of mine. Some people like niche things if it's their niche, right? But I have like multiple niches, Twin Peaks fans will love my Twin Peaks article because I go in depth with it. I did this super long, in-depth analysis of the Stanley Kubrick film. I don't know if you know him. He passed on now, but he's a super famous filmmaker. And so people know him in the mainstream, but this particular movie of his that I covered is not super celebrated. Yeah. But fans of it love it. Yeah. Like I'm a little bit famous online in those circles because of this super in-depth analysis that I did. And so that's interesting too, so it's almost like fringe elements within pop culture sometimes I'm into exploring. I mean, Star Wars is not fringe at all, right? But anyway, so. Yeah.
Is there like maybe an example that you have of when you use pop culture that like directly inspired something in your music?
An example, something from pop culture that inspired my own work? Well, okay, yes, I'll speak generally first, and then I'll try to give an example. So generally speaking, I'm always inspired by things all the time, right? I'll read a book and get an idea maybe from one line of dialogue or a character or something that'll remind me of something else, and then that maybe could go off and that idea can go off and evolve into a piece of art. A movie I watch, a piece of music, I hear a rhyme or something in a song I like, and that may inspire me to write my own rhyme similar to that. And so yes, I'm always hearing stuff, but I don't think of it as being inspired by pop culture per se as much as just being inspired by art and entertainment pieces in general. Yeah. I try not to discriminate. Like I say, there's some more obscure things that I really like too that people who only follow pop culture aren't going to know about. Yeah. So I really don't differentiate. Whatever I like that appeals to me certainly inspires me. And so then as for a specific example of that, I mean, it's hard for me to pinpoint one thing because I find I often draw ideas from many sources that may then amalgamate into one piece for me. But I'll since I was talking about it already, I'll use that example of the Boy Drinks Inc., the brand, the website, the short story, and the song. I mentioned, I think, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that old classic story. The Phantom of the Opera is something I really had in mind as I've been developing this story. Initially, I was going to set it actually in the late 18, early 1900s. Really? which would explain why he has an ink quill. What
That's
kind
true.
of writer would have an ink quill?
Yeah.
An inkwell with a quill pen. So I thought maybe I'll set it back then in this character, and he wears a cloak at night, and the authorities try to catch him as he's spraying these anti-establishment, rebellious political messages on the wall and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it doesn't sound maybe like a Phantom of the Opera, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type story, both of which were written, over 100 years ago, those were kind of examples of inspiration. But anyway, I concluded I am setting it in more in modern times, but maybe in a slightly alternate universe version of our time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Does that answer your question, or you want something more specific? Even I mean,
no, it's okay.
Yeah.
But like.
Well, then I'll just say too. I'll add to that in terms of my reviews, because my website is more for my reviews. Actually, I do have some of my other work on there.
So I have lots of reviews.
Lots of reviews, and essays and stuff. And I'm kind of saving my fiction lately. My current focus is short fiction. I'm trying to write some short stories, and Boy Drinks Ink being one of them, and then get some of those published and eventually get it published in a book collection. So, but yeah, in terms of the reviews, those are very much obviously directly inspired by whatever work it's reviewing, right? But I do put my own personal touch on it. Like I don't try to be objective. I say this is why my voice is always present in my reviews. I say this is why I liked it, or this part appealed to me, or this didn't, and that's why. Which they say in old school traditional academic critical writing you're not supposed to do. The author's voice is supposed to be silent or something. I think that's kind of old school, though. I think that's changed now, So I'm like, why not? Everyone knows this is written by a person. Why do you have to pretend you're not there?
Yeah.
So I do that, and people seem to be fine with that.
Yeah. What do you think draws you to these reviews in the film industry? So is there something that started it?
Just writing reviews in general. Why did I want to do that? Yeah. So I guess it's something I've always done myself, casually, with friends. I've always, since as long as I can remember, I've been really into science fiction and fantasy since I was a kid, and reading all kinds of sci-fi fantasy books, comic books. As I got a bit older, started getting into music, and then specifically hip hop, and worked as a DJ a little bit, and record collect. Got into that, and movies as well. Long time film fan, so I've always been into that stuff as a fan. And then actually, the whole inspiration for my website started in part with my cousin, with me nerding out about my theories about the Star Wars prequel trilogy. This was before the new trilogy came out. And I was telling him my big theories or whatever. And he's like, dude, you should have a blog or something. And I was like, yeah, maybe, And then actually one of my first pieces is a super long analysis of the prequel trilogy that I put on there, which was getting a lot of hate at that time too. And so I kind of wanted to defend it. Because I was kind of leading up to the time when the Disney bought, George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney, and the new films had been announced but hadn't come out yet, and there was all this hate in the prequels. 10 years after, when at the time wasn't that strong. There were more mixed reviews when they came out, and a lot of people liked them. But then over the years, there seemed to be this growing hatred of the prequels, and my cousin. So anyway, I was compelled to write this defense of it, and that was one of the first pieces on my website. Anyway, I'm going off. I forgot what the initial question was.
No, but on Disney buying, what do you in today? Nowadays, there's been a big purchase recently of Netflix purchasing Warner Bros. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's bad and wrong. What we're leading to in these times in all fields is corporate domination, is a concentration of wealth going into fewer and fewer hands, right? And so we've seen that. This is the nature of capitalism, even though proponents of capitalism have promised that it's free market competition, thrives on competition. But we've seen increasingly that's not happening as all these social media things start to merge. Meta owns WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook. It started with Facebook. Google owns YouTube, and now if the deal goes through, I don't know, did it go through? They're saying there's some potential legal things that have to be looked at because there are like anti-monopoly laws that are supposed to support what I'm saying, but of course US is falling apart, and we know they don't care about laws anyway. That's another topic. But anyway, the general thing is that yes, we see these corporations merging, being bought out by the bigger one, and that means less freedom, in my mind, means less diversity of voices, less diversity of creativity, if everything is owned by one guy, one board that determines the content, Doesn't Disney own Marvel Studios too now? So Disney owns Star Wars, they own Marvel. So how is that good for anything?
Yeah,
that's my position. We can debate it if you want, But
for sure. Do you think that the internet and like these big corporations have made it easier or harder for artists to stand out?
Okay, well, the internet, okay. I'd say that's kind of two-part questions. Okay, so one is the big corporate media producers. Has that made it easier for smaller independent artists to find their place? And the other is, has the internet made it, and how do those relate, right? So I'll start with the internet one. There's no clear answer for me. I'm not sure is the short answer. In some ways, yes. In some ways, yes. It is easier for other smaller artists to have a platform, find a voice. In other ways, not. And so, just to clarify, what I mean by that is anybody can start a YouTube account for free.
Yeah.
A website for relatively cheap, and put out whatever you want on there. Right.
They have more freedom.
Traditionally in older models, there was no avenues for that. Before the internet, you had to depend on a big publisher if you wanted something in print.
Yeah, like a newspaper or something.
Newspaper, magazine, radio. Book publishing company, or if you were a filmmaker, you had to get funding by a big studio that had money, so the internet has given platforms to make independent artists have their voice to be able to be heard. But on the other hand, it's increased the ocean, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's more fish in the ocean now. So, in some ways it's made it easier for smaller independent artists to get their voice out there, but in other ways it means there's more competition, more people doing it. And in some ways it's easier to do it, it's harder to stand out, I would say.
For sure. What do you think what are some major pop culture moments from the 90s or the early 2000s that stuck out to you?
Pop culture moments.
And with that, how do you think pop culture has changed from the 90s or 2000s to nowadays?
So what do you mean by pop culture moments? Like, do you mean
where a
celebrity deaths
or something,
or do you mean the release of a certain album or certain movie or something like that?
Yeah, like maybe, I don't know. My dad was talking about Tron being big when he came out.
Okay,
Yeah.
Let's see. From the 90s, right? So, I guess for me, I would say the biggest things that I remember from the 90s is really influencing me is the release of certain hip-hop albums. I kind of grew up in what they call the golden era of hip-hop, which is debated the exact years, but late 80s to mid 90s approximately, whereas just the genre of music was exploding to degrees that it hadn't been before, and there were so many good artists coming out. So I remember awaiting the release of certain albums, like for example this group, A Tribe Called Quest. I don't know if you heard of them. Their third album, I believe, because I had become a big fan by then, called Midnight Marauders, came out in 1993. I was maybe 15. And we were all waiting for it and got it. It's not the day it came out, the week it came out on CD back then. And all listened to it and were blown away. It was this group at their peak, right? Mind you, back then, A Tribe Called Quest was not as, they were kind of more considered an underground or alternative hip hop group as opposed
Yeah.
to like a group that was big in pop culture. Although they did cross over eventually and kind of got more pop culture appeal, right?
Mhm.
But hip hop, that's part of why it was the golden era, is exploding from kind of a smaller, more underground music form into the mainstream.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that's one thing I could think of, is the release of that album was big for me.
Okay. And how do you think pop culture has changed
Oh, right.
from the 90s to now?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question that I'm not sure how succinctly I could answer. But the thing that comes to mind first is that genres started to blend more in the 90s.
Yeah.
Certainly with music, prior to that, 60s, 70s, 80s, there was rock, there was rap, which became known as hip hop, which is a newer emerging.
All kind of separate.
Electronic music was kind of starting. There was reggae. It was very more clearly distinct lines. Mind you, there were people experimenting and blending genres for sure, right?
Yeah.
But not as much. I remember as I came of age in the 90s, there was lots of blending going on. Lots of different kinds of hip hop and rap, rock, and electronic music was also coming out. So that was kind of starting in the 80s, 90s, especially in the 90s. And whereas now, 25, 30 years later,
yeah,
everything's blended together much more. You still have distinct genres as well, but not only that. It's like there's more degrees in between. And that relates back to your question about the internet too, right?
Yeah.
More voices being heard. You see more degrees in between and more fusing and blending and merging of different genres and different mediums too.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah.
Yeah. And so almost everything we do is filtered through pop culture, from like TikTok trends or to how people dress and talk, to movies, music, celebrities, everything like that. And how do you personally, or like in a world like that, how do you think art helps people hold on to their own voice and values? And how do you hold on to yours?
You just got to be true to yourself and not get too sucked into the trends. I don't know. That's what I would say off the top of the head. Like, it's all cool to like something that's popular and, talk about it with friends, and but it doesn't have to be all consuming, I would say you just don't believe the hype a lot of the time. Enjoy it, like it for what it is, but don't buy into one single identity. Yeah. That's what I would say. And I'm thinking about it more. I mean, that's a good kind of complex question, but yeah, enjoy it for what it is. Don't assume, I would say this, don't assume that because something's widely popular, it's good.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't think that deeply or go with the flow or don't even know why they like something or don't analyze it that deeply. And that's fine. Enjoy it on your own level, But a lot of time things are overhyped too. And like with TikTok and all that, things get repeated, shared, overshared. And you're like, what the hell is this? I have to find it. And then you watch it or listen and it's like, that was okay.
Yeah.
So don't believe the hype. Take it with a grain of salt. Be open to everything, but know that things often spiral out of control and get more attention than they deserve as well. That's what I would say about that. Yeah.
For sure. Thank you for being on the Daily Feed podcast. This is Nik Dobrinsky. Did I pronounce that right?
Dobrinsky, close
Dobrinsky.
Enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for being on here.
No problem. My pleasure. And good luck.